Name's Gavin Meikle. I'm the presentation doctor, and this is the first of what I hope will be a series of Facebook Live uh, broadcast sessions, sharing valuable content that I hope will be useful to you. I'm a little less prepared than I was hoping to be because I've had all sorts of technical problems this morning. My desktop computer's crashed, my laptop won't pick up the webcam, so I'm on my phone. So apologies if it goes wrong, and this may be a little bit shorter because I'm still getting used to the setup. But enough of my problems. I wanted to talk to you today about the whole area of public speaking and presentation skills, particularly about people's fear of presentation. It's one of these things. I remember when I first started speaking in public, I was petrified of it. I absolutely hated it. But now, 30 years on, I really love it. I really love the opportunity to connect with, engage, and communicate with groups of people, large and small. But I know for a lot of people watching this broadcast, you might think I'm completely crazy. Who could enjoy public speaking? I mean, I recently was in a discussion on a social introverts group on Facebook, and it was fascinating. I just simply asked the question, what are your fears about public speaking? And I had over 100 responses. They range from, well, everything. I just can't stand it completely, to all sorts of specific things that people worried about. So it's clear that fear of public speaking holds a lot of people back. It holds them back from presenting on their business or their products and services to potential clients. But it also holds them back potentially in terms of becoming a manager or becoming a leader and presenting to groups of staff or colleagues or even volunteers. And it also holds people back in their career because many organisations now are looking for communication skills as part of the portfolio of core skills for promotion. And they will ask people to give presentations during interviews or assessment days. And of course, that just really scares the living daylights out of people and either stops them from applying in the first place, or they just freak out and they don't get the promotion they wanted. So I wanted to start by asking you, or getting you to think about really, what is the worst thing that could happen about public speaking for you, assuming that you are fearful of public speaking? Because there are people out there like me who have learned to enjoy it, but it is something that is learned. It's not innate or born, at least that's my belief. So what's the worst thing that could happen to you? I mean, when I asked these people on Facebook, I got a lot of specifics. People said things like, well, I might just completely forget what I'm going to say, or I'd lose my fluency, I'd stutter, stumble, not know what to say. I'd be like a rabbit in the headlights in front of an audience, just standing there. They'd all start to laugh at me. They're all judging me. Oh, I hate people looking at me and staring at me, and all those eyes staring at me. Somebody even said, well, I suppose the worst thing would be that I'd faint or I'd die during the presentation. Now, those are all rational, normal fears. But what if I told you that they're not real? Now, you might take offence at that, and I don't mean it in that way, because clearly they are real. They feel real to you or in that situation, and I know how that feels like. I recently I'm learning to play the ukulele, and I recently did a little solo performance to a networking group I'm a member of, and I was petrified, and it didn't go perfectly well, but I got some great feedback at the end of it. But I was, going through a lot of nerves before that, believe you me. But what I mean by real, is it what one, to ask yourself, of the things you fear, one, are they likely to happen? I mean, yeah, of course, somebody might dry up or you might forget your words for a few seconds. But is that such a bad thing in reality? Are people going to sack you because you forgot your words for a second or two? Are they going to punish you because you said the wrong thing or used the wrong word? Are they going to pull out machine guns and shoot you? No. And let's take that worst case scenario that you were to faint completely. I actually had a lady who told me that that happened to her. She was on one of my courses, and she said that she was in an important presentation with her boss in front of a client. She thought there were going to be 6 people in the room. There turned out to be 60 people in the room, 60. So she was standing in front of this crowd with a great big screen behind her, PowerPoint presentation, microphone on and everything. And she stood up, she looked out at them, and she just felt the blood drain from her head. And she fainted, fell to the floor. We all asked her what happened. And she said that, well, her boss came over, and one of the people from the client's company came over, and they helped her, checked she was okay, got her to a chair, got her a glass of water, made sure she was okay, she hadn't hurt herself or anything. And then she said, no, go ahead, I'm fine, I'll recover. So her boss took over the presentation, he did his bit. She was able to gather herself and come in and do a second part of the presentation later on. And actually, they won the business. They won the deal with the client, even though she had fainted. And I asked her afterwards, were there any long-term, long-lasting negative effects of that situation? And she said no. I got a little bit of ribbing from some of my colleagues for a few days, but nothing major. They're all very sympathetic. The client was very sympathetic. And actually, having gone through that, I feel stronger because of it. Because I know now that even if the worst thing happened, I could still get through it, and it's not the end of the world. So if you're thinking about presentations but are worried about that fear of presentations, then maybe you need to start questioning, one, is it likely to happen? Because if you do your homework and you prepare and you do some rehearsal and you get some feedback from some colleagues or some family members or some friends, somebody you trust who you know will give you advice, and particularly who will give you feedback not only on what you need to do to improve, but what are you doing already that is working really well? Because I guarantee you will be doing some things right. Believe you me, I've worked in this business for long enough that I know that everybody has some presentation skills. The second thing to ask yourself is, even if that thing did happen, is it really so terrible? I know in your head it feels scary. People are judging me, etc. But are they? Or people want me to fail? Do they? I mean, when you sit in an audience and you watch somebody speak, do you sit there willing them to be boring and to stumble and stutter and make mistakes? No. You want them to do well. You're willing them to do well because, there but for the grace of God go you. And the vast majority of people in our audience want us to do well. So if you start to think about that, maybe it just changes the way you think about that fear. One gentleman I was working with said that he was worried about people judging him. And so he avoided presentations and got one of his junior staff to do the presentations for him. But he asked for help because he wanted to do the presentations. He knew he should be doing the presentations. And when we explored what it was he was afraid of, it was this judging thing. And I said, well, yeah, people will make some judgments about it. It's how human nature we come at first impressions. But at least if you're there doing the presentation, you have got some opportunity to influence that judgment. But if you don't do the presentation and you avoid it and people know that you're getting people to substitute for you, guess what? They're going to judge you. And they're going to think, well, why isn't Fred doing this presentation? Where is he today? Why isn't he doing it? And they're going to make probably worse judgments about you because you're not there than if you were there doing it. So rather than running away from those presentations, think about using them as an opportunity to influence people, to create your own reputation, your own brand, and manage that, people's perception of you. And you'd be surprised at the positive things that you can achieve. I was thinking the other day about one lady I was working with in a college, and she stood up in front of myself and her colleagues to give a short presentation, and she suddenly said, look, I can't speak in public. I just can't. I dry up. I can't remember what I'm going to say. And for 5 minutes, she fluently described how she couldn't speak in public. And I kind of pressed the pause button and said, stop. Do you realise what you've just done? You've just spent 5 minutes telling us very clearly, very confidently, very assertively how you cannot speak in public. And she paused and said, "Oh my God." And her colleague said, "Yeah, isn't it weird? In our head, we tell ourselves these things. I can't do this. And then we do it. We can do it." So I think there's a big psychological component to this. It's about, our belief systems and what we think about it. And if we've had a bad example when we were younger, often at school perhaps, and we maybe forgot something or we got laughed at, we carry that with us and we form this belief that says, well, I can't present. I'm not a public speaker. I can't do it. But actually you can, and you probably do it all the time without thinking about it, to small groups of friends in the pub on a Saturday night when you're not consciously making a presentation. So challenge those beliefs you have about yourself. One of the best tips I ever got from a friend of mine was to say that a belief is just a thought that you've ceased to question. Just think about that for a second. A belief is just a thought that you stopped questioning. So if you believe that you cannot present, that's a thought. It's not written in tablets of stone somewhere. But analyse it. Is there any evidence for that? Do people tell you you're a terrible presenter all the time? Do you mess up every presentation you've ever done completely? Or does part of it go okay? You maybe just forget one little thing. So question those beliefs and think about, is there any evidence in existence that is contrary to that belief? Do people tell you you present well? Did anybody come up after a little meeting or something and say, "Oh, that was great. I really enjoyed your presentation. I learned a lot from that. I loved it when you told the story about X, Y, and Z." Are there any contra-examples? Because the challenge is, if you have a belief that says you cannot present, the natural way your brain works is it will filter out those things and you won't notice them consciously. You'll just notice the criticism, often the self-criticism. Yeah, but I didn't do this, and I didn't do this, and I should have done this, and I forgot this, and I should have told them that, and I forgot a word at that point, or I missed a piece out, or I went off track. But what did you do well? We're in an era now of equal opportunities, aren't we? So if you truly believe in equal opportunities, be equal opportunities on yourself. By all means, criticise yourself and look at what you didn't do so well in order to improve. But at least spend at least the same amount of time, and preferably more, looking at what you did well. What went well? What did you do right? And if you're not sure, get some feedback. And in my experience, there are two ways to get that feedback. One is to ask some trusted friends or colleagues who you know will give you honest feedback and who don't have an agenda against you. The other thing is to use your smartphone and video yourself, get somebody else to video and play that video back and look at it as if you were an external observer looking at that person. I know a lot of people say, "Well, I don't like looking at myself on video." I mean, I'm looking at myself now on the phone screen as I'm speaking to you. And it's quite scary, really, and you probably think the same way. But no, you get used to it. It's just an element of practice. And by looking at that, you can see what you do well. You can see how you use gestures, how you make eye contact. You can hear how you sound. Is your voice clear? Are you speaking nice and slowly? Or are you speaking at 100 miles an hour and nobody can understand what you're saying and it's just a stream of you're hosing down the audience with information? Oh, see, I made a mistake there. I forgot what I was going to say. Is that the end of the world? No. Thank you, Russell. I think that was you watching this video now. So get some feedback and video yourself. With just a few of those little things, you can make a huge difference to your presentation skills. So that's enough of me rambling on at the moment. I would love to be able to throw this open to questions to see if there is anybody watching live at the moment, and if so, do you have a question? So I see that Russell Streeter is live at the moment. So Russell, if you have a question or a comment about this topic of presentation errors, please post it and if I can work the technology, I'm more than happy to respond to it. And hopefully Russell or the other people watching are typing this in. If not, I'll share one more tip with you. And that's a tip about thinking about how do you enjoy how do you engage an audience? A lot of people think that public speaking is a one-way process. It's just you talking at the audience. But in reality, it's a two-way process. If you get it in your head that you're having a conversation with everybody in the audience, even if they're not speaking back to you, they are giving you feedback. They're nodding, they're smiling. You're seeing their body language. If you can start to think about that two-way process, how can you engage with them? By asking them questions or rhetorical questions, getting them to think about something and putting in a pause to allow them to answer that question in their own head. Then you can get some more engagement. Now, Russell has posted a great question, which is about how can I stop pacing? Movement is one of these things. It's good, generally speaking, in public speaking. I remember 25 years ago, people were always taught, stand at a lectern, stand absolutely straight, don't move around. I think nowadays we've eased off a bit now, and movement is natural, it's real. The problem is when it becomes repetitive or unnatural and it becomes a distraction. I remember a guy, an army careers guy, came into the school when I was about 14, and he paced up and down in front of the classroom as he spoke the whole time, back and forward, and back and forward, and back and forward. And it was just so distracting and annoying. I can't remember anything he said, I just remember his pacing. And it's easy to fall into this trap. And I know there are people who worry about this pacing. And I think the trick is, one, don't beat yourself up about it. Being aware that you maybe are doing it or you've had feedback about it is great, because now you can start to think and do something about it. I think the key is to try and disconnect speaking and moving. So think about moving maybe to a different area of the stage in silence. Maybe when you're thinking about the next thing you're going to say. Then stop, plant yourself, and then ask a question or make a comment or share an idea. And then maybe ask another question, move to another area of the stage in silence, pause, and then say the next part of it. So that's one thought, Russell, about pacing. I've got another question here from Amon, who says, what would be my number one tip for someone who is really nervous? Ooh, I hate questions where it's always, well, what's the number one tip? Because to some extent, it depends on the person. Depends on what's causing them. As I've said, I think the key is not to let your fear run away with you. In fact, I'll tell you what I think the number one tip is, just come into my head, which is about welcoming fear. A lot of us feel fear is something to be avoided. We want to get rid of it. We want to eliminate it. But actually, I see fear now. I didn't used to, but I see fear now. When I feel a little bit of nerves or anxiety, I welcome it because I see it as a source of energy. What I want to do is transform that nervous energy into my voice, my eye contact, my gestures, so that it powers and adds value to my presentation. And the tip I was given, that quite often when we're nervous, that anxiety, and this relates to Russell's comment about the pacing too sometimes, perhaps, is the nervous energy leaks out in distracting movements, fidgeting. I used to rub my nose an awful lot, clicking pens or pacing around without any purpose. And what I was told was to, if you have that vision that this energy is leaking out from you, and it's distracting, is to imagine you could draw that energy back inside yourself, metaphorically. So pull it back into your center and then channel it out into your hands, into your eye contact, towards the audience, so it becomes that energy, that connection that flows between you and the audience, and from them to you as well. So that would be my number one tip, Imon. Are there any other questions this morning? I've been speaking for about 20 minutes, which is probably enough if there are no more questions. So seeing none, I hope this has been useful. For those of you that have been on the call today, thank you very much for tuning in. And if you'd like to give me some feedback afterwards offline about either the content of this Facebook Live or my delivery, then I'd really appreciate that. And if you haven't been watching live, but you watch this later today, I hope it's been valuable. Please, leave any comments, post any additional questions, because I'd like to be doing this on a regular basis. One of the questions I'd like you to answer, if possible, is when would be a good time for this? Because I randomly picked 8 o'clock in the morning, but it could be a different time. So if you've got a view on what would be a good time for you when you'd like to listen into this kind of thing, or what topics you'd like to hear, then please leave a comment after this post. So thanks for listening. It's been a great pleasure. It's been a little bit nerve-wracking, but quite good fun as well. Not as bad as I thought it was. So if anybody out here is thinking about doing Facebook Live, have a go, and maybe I'll change my mind when I see what the reactions are. But anyway, have a fantastic day, and just think about some of those things I said, particularly about the limiting beliefs about if you're thinking they're going, I'm not a public speaker, because I guarantee it, you are. Bye now.